I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man Ant Walker here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. We have a full panel today, and I'm very happy to reintroduce a couple people who've been on the show quite a few times. You've grown to know and love them, and we welcome them with open arms yet again. First up is the former co-host of the Sherdog live chat show, The Trenches. My partner in crime there. He is currently the editor of Sportsnaut, making his return to MMA content, which we haven't seen him do for a little while now. I'm just happy to be reintroduced. This guy, this is Captain Credential. This is the man, Jason Burgos himself. What's up, man?
I'm happy to be. I mean, this is far nicer than all the things you said about me like 4 or 5 minutes ago. But I'm happy to be here. Happy to see Ben, Jay, Patrick. You so much. This is a bit of a living death seeing you, but it's okay. I'm happy to be here.
See, I'm trying to be nice to uphold my image of being a nice, kind person who gets along with everybody. And you're
I want to dispel that. He's not a nice guy, everybody. He's just not. He's very mean.
I'm not. So
Mr. Dana White said you're a mean guy.
Dana says it has to be true.
I mean, Dana never lies. We know.
Exactly.
And of course, you see him at the bottom of your screen with the Phillies hat. He is also a former partner of mine on the Body Locks mini video segments. Currently, he is with Sherdog.com with the Fight Business podcast. Let's welcome back Pat OJ. Pat, what's going on, my man?
Not much, man. Phillies are in the playoffs. Gonna win that NLCS. Got my Bucky's mug, man. Drinking some coffee. It's a good day. It's a good day. Glad to be here too. But
as a Mets fan, I thank you for beating the Braves. That was the best thing that happened this month for me.
As a Braves fan, ouch.
I mean, it's I don't feel bad for either of you.
That one's done.
Now, as a friend, Pat, I'm going to ask you: are you wearing the Macho Man shirt right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course I am.
Seriously, like the last 6 times I've done a video chat with you, you've been wearing the Macho Man shirt.
Yeah,
it's a powerful shirt.
He
has a closet with 15 of those shirts hanging on hangers, kind of like Joe Rogan has black silk dress shirts that are 2 sizes too small. That's his. Yeah,
he's got the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire shirts.
So here's the thing: I do have 2 of these,
yeah.
And then I do. I mean, I love Macho. What can I say? But then I do have a running bit with one friend where I only wear the Macho Man shirt when I see him for it's been 6 months, and it's anytime we hang out, I wear a Macho Man shirt, and he's like, "You don't watch?" She goes, "Like, no, man, I do. What are you talking about?" And then, I started doing it for interviews and other stuff like this. I didn't realize I was doing it to you by accident, but that just makes it even better.
That's great. I mean, it makes me want to snap into a Slim Jim. So, of course, we've got 2 more gentlemen who and you see here every week. We've got the senior editor of Sherdog.com and the big homie, Ben Duffy, the jack of all trades, who's master of them all. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's always nice when Burgos decides to, come slumming and grace us. Now that I see he even changed his Twitter handle back. It was Jason Burgos is now too good for MMA, and he changed that back, just for today. And then always good to see Pat.
Yeah, it's good. Good that Jason came down from the skybox today to come visit us.
You're welcome.
And of course, we've got the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, also quite the aficionado of Hawaiian shirts. Jay Petrie, what's up, Jay?
I believe I'm breaking this out for this show, this brilliant red shirt today, because I'm overjoyed to have my friends get together, because it's always a good day when we get to talk ridiculous things that happen in the sport. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say there's a couple that we're going to talk about. I don't have as much of a ridiculous stat of the week, but it's actually kind of noteworthy. UFC card that happened, Vegas, what was it, Vegas 2062 or Vegas 62 anyways. It was a prelim fight between Jacob Malkoun and Nick Maximov. Whatever, the fight happened and whatever. But Jacob Malkoun landed 9 takedowns. Now, why is that noteworthy? Because in his last 4 fights, he's landed 30. He's landed 30 takedowns in his last 4 fights, which the middleweight record is 42. So he's almost caught Chris Weidman in 4 fights. He is 2 good performances away from being the UFC middleweight takedown leader already. That's weird, guys. That's unusual.
So what you're saying is he is the UFC's all-time worst fighter at keeping people down.
That's exactly where I was thinking.
It's like Khabib and Abel Trujillo. Just can't keep that nightmare down.
I think Khabib was trying to start like Dagestan's first airline on, on that particular
Well,
film.
Rustam Khabilov was definitely the co-pilot in many of his fights.
Yeah.
If only you if only you could take down Abel Trujillo before he gets to the high school grounds. That would be the best case scenario for us all.
Oh, man.
All right, fellas. Well, let's go ahead and briefly talk about it, because obviously UFC 280 is coming up this weekend, and we really want to devote the lion's share of our discussion to that. But we got to get through UFC Fight Night 212. And speaking of getting through UFC Fight Night 212, I mean, this was a card that you look at it on paper was really just scraps as far as the name value and as far as exciting matchups that we really were looking forward to. Were there any big takeaways, any lessons learned, star-making performances, anything that you want to highlight from that card?
How we starting, Ant?
Whoever, free for all.
I'll jump in. Big star-making. I don't know if it's a star-making moment, but an eye-opening moment. If you're watching that division closely, Joe Anderson Brito. He took on a guy in Lucas Alexander that, okay, it wasn't as good as the original Melsik Baghdasaryan fight, but it was a much more interesting matchup than the briefly booked AJ Cunningham short notice fight. Cunningham fell off after I recorded a preview segment for it. Lucas Alexander's in, but Alexander is legit. He's a guy that probably would have ended up in the UFC in the next year or two anyway, and this might have just been a little too early for him. Think of someone like David Onama, who's a really good fighter, and just, his short notice debut didn't go great. But Brito throttled that man in 2 minutes in a way that had people not hyperbolically on Twitter saying, does this feel like early Jose Aldo, or does this feel like Davis and Figueiredo? I mean, just the combination of aggression, well-rounded offensive skills in all departments. 145 is a hard division to distinguish yourself. You got to do a lot to get into the top 10 there. But at age 27, Brito looks like the real deal. Very exciting guy to watch going forward.
Yeah, nice one. Any other takeaways you guys want to share? Go ahead.
I think okay. Then I will make a statement on that for this specific reason, because I think the silence, the crickets that you've been hearing, is true. It's accurate. Like Ben had to dig down into the early prelims to be able to point out a noteworthy guy who took on a fighter that stepped in on incredibly short notice, and that spoke to the level that this card was. It lost a couple of great fights, but even if Neil Magny and Daniel Rodriguez had stayed together, what is the biggest thing that could have happened? Rodriguez starching Magny, or Magny elbowing his face off? There's not much there. Askarov, Royval falling off the card too. We wouldn't have had a number one contender. We would have had like a guy that's 2 wins away because of the way flyweight is. Yeah. So the UFC stacked the deck against itself in this fight card. And that's really strange to me, that the best possible outcome for the main event is to wait for the fight that's happening next week to see if somebody may possibly get a title shot, maybe, and or the sacrificial lamb for Valentina Shevchenko, if we forget about Tyler Santos. So yeah, I think this card stung in a way of, who's closest to a title shot. Ben usually talks about in his show with Keith Schillen is, who is 2 wins away, 1 win away, and this was tough. This was a tough sell.
I get a question because, and those fights you mentioned, they were still below this main event, even before they were taking on the card. Like, is this like maybe the worst main event set up on purpose? Like, maybe ever in UFC? Like, it's 2 fighters between them. They got like 1 finish in the UFC. Alexa Grasso is not a main event fighter. Like, I know the implications. Oh, it could be a contender Valentina, or honestly, it could be the sacrificial lamb, like mentioned to Valentina. But like, is this one of the worst set up on purpose main events? Not because of injuries. Like, this was the plan all along. And this is who's watching this? Who's watching this?
You know what? If it wasn't Clay Guida and Gray Maynard the main event.
But at least they got like Claymore has got a fan base. Like that's
he's got a fan base,
know?
but you talking about like such a meaningless main event when that was scheduled. It's just totally just a waste of a 5-rounder. At least like Grasso and Araujo, like that's a real fight amongst the elite of the division, even if that's a very thin division. So I couldn't put it in that same category. I mean, it's one of those challenges with sports, and I'm sure, you know, in your position now where you're dealing more with like the major stick and ball sports, it's not uncommon that the best of the best competing aren't always the most exciting, and the combination of them is not always going to be the most entertaining. But for the record, I was entertained by this main event. Do want to put that out there.
It was about as entertaining as we could have reasonably expected. I mean,
Yes.
the only more sizzling alternative would have been if like Araujo plunked her in the first 2 rounds. But this is almost the UFC showing a little bit of foresight and taking its medicine in advance, which it doesn't do often with matchmaking, because Grasso was 3-0 at flyweight coming into this fight. If she wins, there's a good possibility she's fighting Valentina Shevchenko next, and you got to put her in a main event. Otherwise, us types are going, well, here's the young, attractive Mexican star who's undefeated in the division. This is what the UFC's been trying to build for 10 or 15 years. She's in a title fight, and nobody knows who the hell she is because you never even had her headline a meaningless fight night card. So here she is headlining a meaningless fight night card, and I'm still kvetching about it, but I understand why they did it, and it actually kind of makes sense.
The only other one I think of that in the past couple of years, and I think COVID had a lot to do with it, was Jessica Eye versus Cynthia Calvillo, because Calvillo was making her debut in the division, and Jessica Eye was about 14 wins away from a title shot, given what happened to her and getting planked not long before that fight. So yeah, and I think that was intentionally made because wasn't that the fight card that might have been like Kazakhstan, and it was like Peter Yan. I think that there was a whole weird history about that one, but I mean, you have to dig. I think is the right point that Burgos is making. It's that yes, it's number 5 versus number 6, but in terms of violence potential, in terms of excitement potential, we capped out, we lucked out because they could have been worse. But I don't know if it could have been that much better and or relevant.
Dude,
Women's
5 versus
flyweight is
10.
becoming like early 2000s middleweight, or maybe mid-early. When Anderson was first taken over, there was just like no really worthwhile contenders and no serious threats. You had like the Travis Luters of the world and fights.
Hey, he's the Michael
This is what this
Jordan
division
of
feels like.
So women's bantamweight is what you're saying. Is women's
Yeah.
flyweight is essentially the
Oh, sorry.
bantamweight.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, no,
I mean-
the most exciting thing on this card for me, or like the fight I was most interested in rather, was seeing, unfortunately, RIP Mike Jackson's UFC career. That was rough, but I was rooting for him. I was hoping for the upset.
Hey,
I don't know if his career's over.
Ooh,
I
okay.
don't know.
here you go. I mean, 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, Mike Jackson entered the UFC along with Phil, CM Punk Brooks, and Mickey Gall as part of the CM Punk's in the UFC experiment. I understood why they did it. I did a 90-minute feature, interview with Mike before that, his fight with Punk, and he made the case. He's like, well, Punk can't go fight on an LFA undercard. It'd be exploitative. They couldn't pay him near what he was worth. If he wants to even try this, he has to do it in the UFC. Like, it sucks, but he's doing what he has to do. Of the 3 of those guys, Jackson was the only one without any actual legitimate MMA aspirations. He was like LFA's photographer and videographer, shot UFC events too, had done some kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, had never fought an MMA fight. He was just doing it for fun. And that's compared to CM Punk, who really did want to make some kind of run at this and see what he could do. And then Mickey Gall, who's a 22-year-old kid that actually wanted to be a UFC fighter. It is a delicious and wonderful irony that the one guy who just did this for shits and giggles, which is literally the name of his podcast, is the one that outlasted the other 2 in the UFC. Mike Jackson, he's a friend. He's a hero. He is the truth.
He's the truth.
Yeah. And it's funny because they've tried to set up Mike Jackson in a fight that would do this to him pretty much his entire UFC run. Like that was the whole purpose. Like, put Mike Jackson in front of somebody that's going to beat him, and hopefully he gets beat bad and we have a highlight reel out of it. They thought CM Punk was going to out grapple him. That clearly didn't work. Who else?
Dean Barry.
Dean Barry.
He got Dean Barry kicked out of like a legit prospect.
Dean Barry like eliminated himself from this process, you know, and then they finally get Pete Rodriguez to do it. But that meant Mike Jackson had an actual UFC run. Like Mike Jackson was actually a winning UFC fighter for much longer than many people thought his career would last. So the thing that's floating out here now, thanks to Ariel Helwani, like he's throwing out the idea of Mike Jackson versus our friend Casey Leydon, which I'm actually kind of into that. I'm really kind of into that. That would be an interesting fight for both of them. I don't know. Casey might be too small now because he's shed a lot of weight since since starting his training.
They're pretty similar though, because Mike is 6 feet tall and he fights at 170, but he doesn't cut to get there. Like he could fight at 155 if he wanted. Like that's about Casey's size.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, so the time I met Mike Jackson on one occasion that I can clearly remember, and he was definitely telling me that when someone threw out on Twitter that I should fight Mike Jackson, I just laughed them out. They're like, no way, the guy's like super tall to me, but Casey's bigger than me, he's taller than me and stuff. But I've sparred Casey and stuff, and it didn't feel like that huge of a size disparity. So, you know, maybe just the fact that Mike Jackson doesn't cut, maybe he just walks in the cage as is, I guess has a lot to do with it. But I don't know. We'll see. This might happen. If it does, we probably could get Mike and Casey on maybe at the same time. From what I understand, they have a friendly rapport, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get them to sit down and share some thoughts. But if it happens, if it does, we'll make it happen for you guys. All right, gentlemen. So let's give just a couple minutes here to the main event. I mean, we did mention Alexa Grasso coming up victorious now, and this is sort of the case with everyone at women's flyweight. You get a few wins under your belt, and then it's like, damn, are we seeing Valentina Shevchenko's next opponent, or do they need some tutelage? Is there, are both true? Which one is it? Is Grasso going to be the next contender, and is she ready for that?
The only thing that could prevent it is if Manon Fiorot does something spectacular to Katlyn Chookagian in Abu Dhabi. That's pretty much it. If Grasso had won emphatically against Araujo, I think she'd be in no matter what. But, you know, just we got a very competitive 50-45 fight, if there's such a thing, and nothing really spectacular, so we watch and wait. The interesting thing is, I mean, the UFC's whole pattern across all weight classes since its inception, since there were belts, is people calling for undeserved or premature title shots. Like anyone's won a couple fights in a row, got the champ's name in their mouth. And that's still the case today, unless the champ of your division is Amanda Nunes or Valentina Shevchenko. Then all of a sudden nobody wants it. Yeah. Like there's actually like an exodus, a diaspora from the UFC women's bantamweight division of women failing to make 135 because they don't want to just go up to 145 because they'd get to Nunes too quickly. So they'd rather kill themselves trying to make 135 and like literally just slow roll themselves to the point that Aspen Ladd rolled her own ass to PFL. It's hilarious. And here, any other division, someone who's won 4 in a row and is undefeated in that weight class, they're calling out the champ, and Grasso's like, well, you know, maybe I'll take another 5-round fight first.
Yeah.
I got an idea. I mean, I get the case for Grasso. It makes sense, and Fiorot makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. They've been calling for that like 2 fights ago. They were talking about her and Shevchenko. But is there any case to be made for Tyler Santos? I was really impressed with that fight. I thought that was a very close fight. That's the first time Shevchenko outside of Nunes has really been pushed on a split decision. That fight could have maybe went to Santos. Like, is there not a case if like your options are Grasso or Fiorot isn't that great in her fight, giving it again to Santos and having a real competitive fight and maybe a person that actually beats Shevchenko?
You bring up a good point, Jason, but I think the issue is going to be more so what's going to sell. And Alexa Grasso is the much more marketable person. And the UFC has put a great deal of investment in having, you know, a conveyor belt of Mexican stars. I mean, Cain Velasquez became an injury-riddled failed experiment. When you look back on it, they fumbled the bag big time with Yair Rodriguez So this is sort of their next attempt at having a Mexican star, a homegrown Mexican star. So I think it's going to go to Grasso. But this is the best that they're gonna. You got a striker. You got someone who has a primarily striking style. They're actually from Mexico. They speak Spanish. They check those boxes. It's better. It's better than the 100,000 buys you're going to get with Santos.
But doesn't Santos kind of have like, because again, we all talked about how this card wasn't interesting. We weren't that excited for it. She's at the top of it. She's kind of uninterested again in title fight. Isn't her interest level with the Mexican market probably equal to what Santos could bring with Brazilian fans that are dedicated MMA audience too? Like, is Grasso's reach really that great?
I think it's greater than it's probably lower than what I'm giving credit for, but greater than what you're giving credit for. We look at the history of Mexican boxing fans. Like someone who doesn't watch boxing, a Mexican who doesn't watch boxing will watch Canelo Alvarez. I can tell you this, in living in a neighborhood that's like 90% Mexican. When Canelo fights, I hear the fight parties, all these families that. Whenever any other person is fighting any other major sport event, you don't hear the same parties going on. So I would expect at least some of that for a homegrown Mexican going into a UFC title fight. That seems a lot more likely than all of a sudden people interested in Santos.
Well,
I guess a good question is, what were the buys for like Brandon Moreno's main events? If they were good, that's a great litmus test. If they weren't, maybe the Mexican audience for MMA is not as good as we think.
Brandon Moreno, from what I understand, at least in Southern California, and, keep in mind, once again, I live around a lot of a huge Mexican population. Brandon Moreno was very well known and very well loved. What that translation to buy rates, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I do know that there's a more general understanding of who he is, as opposed to, some other, as opposed to say an Aljo or something, like someone else who's a champion that isn't Mexican.
And what I'll say from a buy rate perspective, I know Moreno Figgy did well when they headlined after their fight of the year, right? That like they did very well in the follow-up. Moreno definitely got some traction there. I think he's the best shot at a Mexican star right now for the UFC. But I also think Grasso or Santos versus I don't think Shevchenko is ever headlining another pay-per-view. That's not the free ESPN Plus card that they sometimes do once a year. Like and so I think regardless of who they put up there, they'd rather do Grasso in case it's more exciting. But I don't think you're going to get into a buy showdown there. I think the UFC learned its lesson with Shevchenko, and even Nunes is headlining of a couple of times against Spencer and Pennington, who did very badly. So,
that is exactly the point I was going to bring up, is that Shevchenko is not headlining a pay-per-view fight card unless the main event that was supposed to be scheduled above it falls through. Or
caveat. If Whaley wins the belt and they do Whaley versus Shevchenko, that's the only time they'll headline. Yeah, because they will headline that.
I could see that. I could see that, but that's a lot of moving parts to get there, and I'm not sure that. I mean, like, Whaley's got to get past the nightmare of Carlos Barza. I mean, that's the tough test. Anyway, I don't want to riff on that too much.
I don't even think Nunes 3 would
Nunes 2 did,
because they.
I feel like they did headline with one of those two, and it was
Nunes 2 had the headline in National Fight Week at like 145. Lowest in National Fight Week buy rate. But Nunes is also not a draw at all. Like, die on that hill. Yeah, I mean, I like her a lot. She's a great one of the goats of women's MMA, but she does not move.
She should be, but she's not. And if Amanda Nunes and her highlight reel isn't, I can't imagine there's going to be many. That possibly could. Like, Cyborg sold 100,000 in boxing, but that was a one-time thing. That was a novelty. That when Cyborg fights a 16 and 18 opponent in her next fight, that's not selling, diddly. I don't think that. I think it was. You remember the UFC on Fox card that the UFC held with Machida and Bader and Vera and Shogun. I forget the order, but it was Machida and it was where Dana said the better winner of these fights will get the next title shot. You remember that situation?
Yeah, definitely remember that.
That was the kind of situation that I think ended up happening with Grasso. Like, because she did what she was going to do, she did what a lot of us expected that she would do, and it wouldn't be dazzling, and it would make her there. But if Manon Fiorot beats Katlyn Chookagian next week, then it doesn't matter. I think all she has to do is get a win, because Chookagian's the number one fighter in the division, the one who is knocking down all the rest of the contenders, the Holly Holm of 125. So I think if she's able to let the UFC go, oh, thank goodness, now we can let Katlyn Chookagian go to Bellator, then they'll give Manon Fiorot the shot. And Tyler Santos is the X factor. She's the standby making weight fighter.
She'll be the backup fighter.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I just don't think Fiorot. I don't think she's gonna do enough against Chookagian.
No, I have Chookagian 30-27ing or
I mean,
29-28ing her.
If you want to see Chookagian, be on the wrong side of a spectacular finish, you're gonna need Harlem. So let's just let's keep things pushing here.
We're on Josh.
Come on down, Josh. Yeah. Whoa. That was so funny. This guy Ben disappeared. Oh my god.
Yeah,
I've off the show. All right. He'll be back shortly. All right, fellas. So probably the biggest news to come out of last weekend of fights wasn't even in the UFC. This was actually in the LFA. The UFC and Meta, as we knew from the Mark Zuckerberg renting out the Apex Center, that something was going on business-wise with the UFC and Meta. And Pat, I know you've probably done a deep dive on this for Fight Business, but what are our impressions here? A VR way to view the LFA? Will it expand to the UFC? What's the whole thing like?
I guess should I ask, did anybody end up watching it? Or was it?
I know you watched it, Jay, right?
Yes, yeah, I did. That's why I wasn't sure if anybody else did. I don't know if anybody else has VR equipment.
No,
I didn't know that was still going on. I thought that was done.
Oh no, Meta porn is on the way, Jason.
Oh my god, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Anyway, so I'll give you a little inside, or not really, what it was like. It was you put on the headset and you can actually walk down the tunnel like you're entering the building and going to those posters on the wall. They really tried to make it a fancy thing, but the quality of the and when you go, there are people. There are little people walking around that look like Wii characters. So they're very low quality, smiley faces, and they have the little hair and the shirts and the stuff they want to wear.
Like basic avatars.
Yes, very basic avatars, and their name above them. They're walking around, they're sitting. You can watch this. And there are multiple tiers you can get, and you can watch the action. The camera is sitting on two corners of the top of the cage. So like over here and over here, there are 180-degree cameras that you can look down in the cage and see what's going on. And the viewable area is large enough that you can actually look down and see, the action that's going on. You can look over here. You can see the roof of the Sanford Pentagon. You can see all those kinds of things. And they also set up little view screens on the side if you want to see what the TV people see. Well, just by watching the show regularly, you could also watch that. It was fascinating because you could also turn on your microphone and talk fights with people. There was a guy standing next to me that forgot to leave his microphone off and was like eating chips and talking to his girlfriend and burping, just like it felt like I was watching fights with somebody, which was so weird in that regard. But the Meta headset has a battery power about 2 and change hours. A live event is longer than 2 and change hours.
Oh yeah.
So you can plug it in, and then you're tethered somewhere. You can't whatever, but you can sit back and you have your hands to move around. You can make like fireworks, and you can do like the finger guns and those kinds of things. But it was a novelty. It was more difficult to watch the fights than if you would watch them on television. If you have any issue with motion sickness, you're screwed. But I enjoyed the experience. I waved to John Morgan. That was kind of fun because he was right over here, and I talked to him afterwards.
Did he have the blue shirt?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Esther was in. I didn't see her, but there were Blaine Henry was in. I didn't get to talk to him. Caposa was doing his thing. He recorded it too. It's interesting, and it's a I'm going to do this once and never do this again. That's the kind of feeling. Like say there's a new flavor of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, like a caramel macchiato special splash of something, and you go, well, that's really weird. I'm going to try that, and you have it and be like, I'm never going to have that again. That was VR experience in the LFA, which means it's coming to the UFC. It was a free thing, so you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to log in. You just go. But I don't know, guys. If you had the ability, would you? Because it was truly cage side viewing, or it was overhead viewing into the cage. So it's something you probably couldn't see. There was no ref cam yet. But would you guys do it?
I would try it at least once.
I'm with Ant, but I couldn't imagine it becoming my primary or preferred way to watch fights.
Right.
I mean, to simulate the in-the-building experience would be an interesting novelty, especially if you've never seen a big MMA event live. But the best place to watch, like the best seat in the house for a UFC pay-per-view, is the seat in my house, where I'm looking at it on two monitors and I'm getting the multi-camera feed that just their regular show runs on. You know, like watching events for my job, that sounds like a nightmare to try to do that on a VR headset with like assholes like eating next to me and, you know, being able to do a single like moving camera view. That sounds terrible. Like that sounds like, you know, Breen and Savage like covering UFC events on Savage's BlackBerry from like the cheap seats. Like nobody wants that.
We got that for a long time though.
I think there is. Here's the thing with VR stuff and sports. I think there is a market for it, and I think that it will be adapted very well for major sports. I feel like being able to sit on the sideline of a football game or a basketball court, right, like courtside VR seats, will attract a whole bunch of people. I think MMA is one of the worst sports that translates over to VR, because I saw some of the feed from Caposa that he put up there. And so he's standing there, right? And you've got the fence. So you got to look through the fence to see that, which is already annoying in real life, even if you've got, you know, seats cage side, as essentially all of us have had at some point covering stuff, right? But like, then it's the same issues where if, you know, they start grappling on the other side of the cage, I got to get in my little VR dude and run across the other camera angle, or, you know, to see what's actually happening, right? It's just, it doesn't make sense for MMA, but there's plenty. I won't get into the business reasons unless you guys want me to go there. There's plenty of reasons why Facebook is going to push this, and they're going to make this a huge deal, and they're going to pay the UFC a ton of money to do it.
And they're going to lie about how many views it's getting.
They're gonna. I mean, I don't know if they. That's part of the issue, though. I don't know if they can because of some of their disclosures, right? Like Facebook's in a bad way, man. They're 60% down on the year. If you bought 5 years ago, you're down 25%, and we haven't hit like a full-blown recession era yet. Like they are spiraling, and they're trying to find anything. And Zuckerberg seems to be obsessed. I know a couple friends in Austin that work at Meta, and like, it's all about Metaverse. It's everything about Metaverse. And he's going all in on this, and no one seems to have the heart to tell him that, you know, Second Life tried this a long time ago, and that he's paying a stupid amount of money. If you're going to really get this off the ground, you need way better graphics than, as Jay put, like Wii version 1.
That's some bullshit.
Oh, yes.
So it's a whole thing, but I mean, they'll do it. UFC will get a bunch of money out of it. That's why he rented it out. It wasn't so that they could just have a private viewing party. I almost guarantee they were testing out software, and it was proprietary issue. They didn't want anybody taking pictures. They didn't want anybody there they couldn't control. But yeah, it doesn't translate to MMA, man. VR, it's not the sport to do it with.
There was one thing I left off because I didn't want to ruin the idea to you guys. It's not stable as a viewing platform, and what I mean by that is, so I'm watching the fights. I watched a handful of fights. I had to take a break because you don't really want to sit in VR for an hour or two at a time because things start to get get headache or whatever like that. So we're watching the main event. Watching the main event, the title fight, a good fight back and forth, and then it crashes. And so there is a black world in front of us, and you can still see the little stands that are all the people. And there are people like looking around. We're looking at each other. People have microphones on. Like, what the hell's going on? So we're still connected, and we're still there. And we're all looking around, and we're going like a bunch of, because you can control your arms, so a lot of arms up in the air. People disappearing.
Like when the lights go out during an assembly in high school.
And then from
it sounds like a terrible Yui Bowl horror movie.
It's like sharing a virtual apocalypse experience.
Yeah,
based on some terrible video game.
And then one of the guys says, "Oh, expletive." Oh man, because I guess he put his headset up and was watching on TV. At that time when we were dead in the water, the main event guy hits a spinning back kick and knocks the other guy out. Like the money shot was completely removed from the entire experience, and that's what people pay to see. So it's really too bad. It's really too bad that a lot of people were just like, with it. I came to see this fight, and I didn't get to come and see this fight because it was just a shame. It was just a shame. That's all I gotta say. I felt blue afterwards.
I believe Jay just read his Amazon review of his VR headset. Missed the money shot, didn't get to come, left feeling blue. 2 stars, would not buy again.
I can think of one scenario where that might, if they improve the experience, where it might be pretty cool to watch it, and with some level of regularity, because, and this is more so from my cage side experiences, sitting cage side for a heavyweight fight is just different. If the sensory experience is much more like a real event where you can feel the hits.
You could there was the co-main event. You could almost feel when those two big meat piles were slapping into each other.
Need one of them subwoofer kickers in your seat,
Yeah, if you had the full sensory experience with that, watching a heavyweight fight probably gets a lot more entertaining. I mean, you can feel the cage rattling and you can feel the hits, and but obviously this is something pretty new, so I'd imagine this is going to be a greatly improved thing over time, especially if Pat saying is right, that they're throwing so much into metaverse stuff. I imagine they got to improve on it. Pat, am I crazy?
Here's the thing. I think that is the goal. I am very curious to see how long certain shareholders and investors allow Zuckerberg to go down this path. They've got to change some things pretty quickly. And if they don't, then I think this is dead in the water. And I'm not sure exactly what the ramifications are in that, but when I say Facebook is spiraling, it's really bad. It's a problem, and it's going to be interesting to see where the public forces them to go. But yes, in an ideal world, if they invest in it, it gains traction, they're able to put more money over it. Yes, they will have to make some adjustments pretty quickly, and then they'll have to eventually do what you're talking about, do a 4D experience, right? You ever go to those theaters that have the 4D seats that are ridiculous, but if they do something like that, and or maybe they adapt to, I don't know, maybe they adapt the PFL ref goggles things and make it
I was thinking
good.
That too.
Yeah, and then I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do, but yeah, it will probably get better eventually. But they also have a small window from just their own, investor sentiment, but also public, because as you guys have mentioned, adoption is key. Whenever you roll out a new product, you have a very small window, a month to 2 months to get people on board and invested enough to continue using that product. If they if they don't like it or they have a negative connotation and then they tell others, right? There's the whole NPS score. I'm not going to go down that whole thing, but with promoters, detractors of your product, all of that. If you have enough detractors early on, your product's dead in the water, even if you make the adjustments and it's amazing. Like, best example I can think of off the top of my head was, everybody still talks about how crappy Cyberpunk was, right? That game. And apparently they fixed a lot of the bugs and it's super fun. But
I played it for the first time a year ago and it was fucking amazing. And
right,
I missed the whole thing about how it was supposed to be bad.
Yeah, but they turned so many people off early on that even now you have the reputation of that game that failed terribly.
Fallout 76.
Yep. Same thing. And so again,
the Washington Nationals.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. But yeah, no, it's just we'll see what happens. But it's yeah. I mean, UFC's getting paid either way. They don't care. They're just gonna get a lump sum of money for this. So
yeah, they are until they aren't. Though that's the question. Like the whole we've heard a lot about the crypto.com sponsorship kind of starting to possibly lose its structure and not maybe stick around for the 9 years that they signed with. That sounds like it's falling apart. So
crypto's not working. Oh, what a shocker.
Who was it online? I was talking about like the little it was from the Clerks movie. It was the little fake Matrix, the Matrix money or something.
Yeah. It's no, I mean, well, Facebook. That's the thing, though. I don't think Facebook's going to go under. I don't think they're in jeopardy of that yet. But
I'm
if
sorry,
they did, somebody would buy them.
Pause. Did the UFC had a 9-year deal with crypto?
I think it was 7.
Seven?
It was a really long term deal.
Even
with
7. Signing a 7-year deal with a crypto company is like buying your dog a 30th birthday present.
It's like
you're betting on something that happened which seems patently unlikely.
Yeah, you're marrying somebody that's terminally ill at that point.
I mean, my big question is: are they going to go back to the Staples Center, or what? What happens when Crypto.com goes out of business?
It was 10 years, 175 mil.
Becomes the blood
arena.
arena.
Wow!
I don't know.
There you go.
10 years, and it's already a year into it, and it's already being
bankruptcy arena.
They abandoned the
try Minute Maid Park. It's worked well for us here.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Is Minute Maid still making juice anymore?
They're making more than Enron is.
Tropicana.
Which is what the place used to be called.
Astros, man.
All right, so
Get Astros.
all right, well, gentlemen, let's keep things pushing because we do have a huge fight card that we want to discuss later on the show here. Let me put 10 seconds on the clock for everybody. We're going to answer a few questions here. Ben, I'm going to start with you. Was Raphael Assuncau's last performance, a very, very good performance there on Saturday's card? Does it mean he's got something left? Does he have more to prove at 40? Ding.
Normally, in a situation like this, I go, oh, great, this is going to encourage him to fight for 5 more years. But he legitimately looked better against a younger, fresher fighter. He looked good.
All right.
It's the most exciting Assuncao fight in 5 years.
Since the Cody Garbrandt fight, but that wasn't that he won.
Yeah.
That he won.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, you're up next. Where do you place Alonzo Menifield's ceiling?
Pound for pound, number 1, and that's because of what he did the last time he fought before this fight. He has the power to knock out anybody at any time, but he probably won't. So 15 maybe.
Okay, not a bad answer there. I'm. It's strange. Misha Serkinov is probably his best win from a name value standpoint. Just
besides the undefeated Askar Mozarov, yes.
Did he knock out Paul Craig?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Paul. Yeah. It's like Misha Serkinov, the highest name value, but definitely not the toughest opponent he's faced.
Right. It's close to Craig and Serkinov are close. I think Craig's
I give it to Craig.
Craig's
but it's going to be that kind of thing. It really is going to be he beat that guy, and then it's going to be he lost to Devin Clark.
Yep.
Yeah, he's kind of at a weird place.
William Knight took him out. Oh.
Jason, you're up next. Can the UFC rely on Askar Askarov as a flyweight contender?
No, when you miss weight a couple of times, no, he was already a kind of boring flyweight. The bantamweight experiment begins.
Oh, with
That
time
is
to spare.
respect.
Wow, respected the clock. Unlike these two guys who've gotten way too
Shown
comfortable
up.
on the Walkout Network. All right, Pat, you are up for the final question. How does Cups wants to proceed from here after getting finished by Jonathan Martinez?
I think he hangs him up, or he does like one, equally old veteran fight. Otherwise, it's time. It's time, Cup. I love you, Cup, but it's time.
All right, so final question on that one. What weight class would you like to see that fight, and against who?
I guess I would like to see. Honestly, it sucks. No, never mind. Actually, I was gonna say Aldo versus Cub, but again, as a rematch. But I think Aldo would destroy him, and Aldo's retired. I don't know. Cub versus Dom. Let's do Cub versus Dom. Let's let him do that. Have Dom move up. I don't know.
How is Dominic Cruz not fighting Frankie Edgar? This is ridiculous. I don't want to see.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Dom won't ever fight any of our dream matches of like Aldo. Or Frankie. Have a fight Cub. That's the closest we're ever gonna get.
Yeah.
Like we've only been begging for those fights for years.
Yeah.
And we've got nothing. Thanks.
I'm gonna give one more. It should be 145 for both of their sakes, but Cub Swanson versus Uriah Faber. Double say goodbye match. Faber said he wanted to come back and do it again. I mean, at least nobody will probably be hurt badly.
I thought you were going to say BJ.
You're really selling the fight.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
BJ, 155, BJ Penn. Let's do it.
All you got to do is walk into a bar.
Well, those are open weight fights, though. He doesn't do well against those. Remember how big
true.
Machida was?
Yeah.
He held his own against Machida. That's ridiculous. That's
All right, so
unreal.
Cub versus Faber, 135 or 145?
45.
45,
Yeah, 45. Don't make him cut weight.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, gentlemen. So it's time to move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. I'm going to change things up just a little bit here. I'm going to put a minute on the clock. So everybody's got 1 minute to share their I'm not surprised. Ben, I'll begin with you again. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, two things came up this week that seem unrelated to one another, but you guys all being longtime fans and then longtime industry people will recognize both of these penalized behaviors as things that approximately 50% of UFC fighters do on a weekly basis. That is competing with obvious staph infections and betting on UFC fights. The UFC updated its code of conduct to prohibit UFC fighters and those directly connected to them from betting on UFC fights, their own or otherwise. That's a good step, but so difficult to enforce as to be nearly meaningless. And you guys all know what I'm talking about here. It would be tough to stop like teammates of UFC fighters that know they have an injury or something from doing penny ante bets and lining their own pockets. I
think where the day comes in, I think this is why the UFC did this, is that it won't stop the IRS and SEC from investigating where they feel like they want to. So I think that's where it could get real interesting. I think it's just CYA for the UFC.
And then the Ilir Latifi thing where he admitted to having fought Olenek with a staph infection, like legs swollen, a fever. The story was disgusting, but where Olenek just said, well, that's part of fighting, as if anyone listening would be like, well, yeah, of course it is. Your mind goes back to, Kevin Lee was one of the worst examples where he just but that's only because his boil was right in the middle of his chest. We had Luke Rockhold unretire and then re-retire with a sleeve over his leg to cover a staph infection that he seems to have been fighting for literally 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
That is disgusting.
Had Kelvin Gastelum with like boils on his face, and the only reason the fight didn't happen is because of medical emergency for Rob Whittaker. So, he was on
Rob Whittaker's like large colon tried to escape his body so it didn't have to get into a cage with Kelvin Gastelum. It's like, we are going to die in 2 weeks if Kelvin Gastelum bleeds on us. So yeah, his body is just like a fox chewing its own leg off to get out of that fight.
All right, Jay, you're up next. What's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I was going to talk about one. I was going to talk about Aspen Lad. I was going to talk about a couple topics, but no, I am not, because the circus is in town in the beginning of November. Fight Circus 4, which is called Send Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Yes, sir. There are 10 fights on the card plus 2 bonus sideshow attractions, one of which involves Bob Sapp. The other is Indian leg wrestling. We have a variety of delightful fights, including an open weight fight with Will Chope against a guy who is, I think, literally double his weight. We have a John Nutt, the promoter, is fighting those 2 flyweights. So we got that going on. There's something called Spin the Wheel of Violence.
Those 2 flyweights have names, Jay.
Bank and No Money. That's
Thank
their
you.
name. There's something called Wheel of Violence, where you spin the wheel, and that's the rule set you're going to have to adhere to. So it's totally random. This is what's about to happen. There is something called Boardroom Brawl, which is guys in suits are boxing each other. There's something called Upstairs versus Downstairs, which is that, I know, I'm sorry. This is that kicking only guy is fighting against 2 guys that can punch him. Upstairs versus Downstairs.
Wow.
And there's one last fight, which I am asking, and I don't know. I mean, besides the Siamese kickboxing, which we'll talk about that some other time, it's called Domestic Pancrase, also known as Living Room MMA. It will be happening live. I don't know how it's going to work, but I imagine couches and tables and whatnot in the ring, and they're going to fight each other. I don't know. That's my speculation. But let me tell you, November 5th, Fight Circus 4, I disrespect the clock for a good reason, because Send Lawyers, Guns, and Money.
Wow. Yeah.
Bob Sapp. And Bob Sapp.
Oh, man. All right. Jason, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons this week?
A minute probably won't be long enough, but mine's is the UFC getting into slap fighting. I guess you could say I'm a part of this world. I've commentated for Slap Fight Championship, which is the best organization. Inside information, they've been working on this for a while. The world knows about it now, but the person who directs UFC shows contacted me like 4 or 5 months ago to do a pilot on slap fighting. So they've been working on this for a while. I'm tied with the person that runs Slap Fight Championship. They are probably trying to poach their fighters. So this is a serious thing. This is not a game, and they're really putting effort into it. And I don't think it's a bad idea. This is catching on, and this is perfect for their base audience. So if you're not happy with this, it's not going away. There'll probably be a few events of slap fighting from UFC.
And what is the name of the organization that Dana White is forming, Jason Burgos?
What is Slap League?
White Power Slap.
Dana White's Power Slap League. Dana White Power Slap League.
Pat, you're up next. What's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, good segue with all the sex talk. So this truly did surprise me. In the Claressa Shields, Savannah Marshall face-off, the weirdest exchange I've ever heard, and jury's still out on what was meant by this, but Marshall apparently said, the fact that I won got us here, talking back and forth about stuff. Shields said, yeah, sure. And then this is quoted, the fact that we were both screwing each other got us here. Shields then said, I didn't have sex with you. Marshall responded, you did. It's the fact I even gave you attention. Are you joking? You lost the plot. Your head fell off, etc. So UK media ran with this, that apparently like during the Olympic Village, they possibly had sex with each other. And that was what was said. Shields denies it. Marshall hasn't said anything about it. There's just rampant speculation. Either way, just the weirdest exchange that I ever did not expect to hear in the middle of 2 opponents like looking to fight is like, oh, it's because we banged each other. Like, all right. So
wow, that is taking
good
trash talk to a new level. That is
like Mike Tyson saying, "I'm gonna fuck you and make you love me."
Damn it!
Yes!
Was hyperbole.
Beat me to it.
yeah.
I done fucked you.
like, no, I'm telling you, this is a very dangerous precedent to set because can you imagine McGregor's comeback fight as he's looking for new angles to trash talk, and he's like, all right, that's why I banged Dustin Poirier. What? Oh.
Can we
like,
agree
huh?
that Sean
basically said
Strickland's
that
probably
with-
going to be the first to say that?
basically said that about Poirier's wife and his
wife,
GMs, right?
yeah.
He's
He's gonna say he had a
he's
threesome
gonna,
with them or something.
yeah, he's gonna talk about
take it
that.
He's gonna cut out the middle one and just
That's how.
and like he's probably like, man, I wish I thought of this angle when I was fighting Khabib, because imagine the rage that Khabib would have had.
Oh
if
man,
he said something
would
like
have
that.
taken him out of his game.
Oh, it would have totally taken him out of his game. That would have been, or Khabib would have just came in the cage and just shot him. So
Yeah, seriously.
wherever he is right now, George St. Pierre just got much more retired.
He is double secret retired now.
Yeah.
and then it takes GSP's line about not being impressed by performance into a whole nother life.
Oh.
Well, we know about Hughes and behind the barn action, so I'm just saying.
His brother behind the barn. Yep.
So did Matt Hughes bang the goat? All right, so let's let's go ahead and keep things pushing here, because I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, to share, and the clock begins now. And I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. The personalities of mixed martial arts never cease to amaze me, and it's to a point where I just don't expect anything remotely intelligent, human, decent, or remotely moral. A lot of times they just exist in some vacuum devoid of everything that we call humanity. So first up, and I want to be very brief on this. Aljamain Sterling, his fandom over disgraced / celebrated misogynist Andrew Tate, and the Aljo's very tone deaf defense of rape culture, essentially. You can look it up. I don't want to give it any more light, but that was followed by some comedy later in the day as Bryce Mitchell decided to go on a flat earth rant and his demands to debate Joe Rogan. So I guess by this, yes, I'm calling flat earthers really stupid. And yes, I'm separating them from the Holy Spirit. So we'll just leave it at that. Fellas, let's talk about UFC 280, something that we are definitely looking forward to. One Championship's got a couple of cards coming up. I mean, one kind of big card, just different segments, including their next offering for Amazon Prime. And that's cool. That's cool. And if we have time, we'll talk about it, but we probably won't, because UFC 280 is just too good. This is the return to Abu Dhabi. We've got Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev in the main event. We've got Aljamain Sterling and TJ Dillashaw. That fight is now taking on a different angle with what I just mentioned, and that's for the bantamweight title. Piotr Jan is taking a big risk against Sean O'Malley in the third fight from the top. So let's ask that age-old question: who you got? Pat, I'm going to begin with you. Let's start. Oh, wow, I left the clock running like a doofus here. Let's start with Piotr Jan and Sean O'Malley, a non-title fight that has heavy title implications for the bantamweight division. Who you got?
I mean, I got Jan by quite a bit. I think something that I know I've seen some analysts point it out, but I mean, O'Malley is definitely much better than he gets credit for, I feel like, due to his personality. I agree with that. But he has some glaring weaknesses that I think Jan is just going to tear up. The fact that O'Malley is, I think the stat was he's never checked a leg kick, or he's checked like 2 ever. He leaves his front leg out there and just lets it eat up. That's how Vera stopped it, by hurting it right. I don't know how, unless Jan gets reckless and wants to kind of show off and then maybe eat something. But even then, I don't see how Jan loses this fight, unless I'm grossly underestimating the growth O'Malley has had. But from everything we've seen, I understand the odds that are like -400 Jan. I think they're warranted. And I think Jan just pieces him up and is just the better fighter right now. We'll see, but I don't see him losing.
Does anybody disagree with that? You think anybody think O'Malley gets by far the biggest win of his career?
I don't think he gets a win, but I think it'll be close. dealing with length and someone who can use range and stay at a distance, and that's always tough. And the interesting thing about Peter Yan that I think has to factor in is he always seems to be a slow starter. Not so much slow starter, but he analyzes his opponent, and the first round, he can give first rounds away. And with this being a three-round fight, if he gives it away and Sean O'Malley wins it, and then it gets a little close in the second two, I can see maybe O'Malley stealing the win. I still think Yan will win, and I think he has all the tools to win, but it'll be interesting dealing with the length, analyzing it, breaking it down. If he loses a round, I wouldn't completely put O'Malley out of this, but I think he has an outside chance.
I would say it's very outside at the best. And like others, I think O'Malley is legit. I think he is a legit top 10 talent, and I think he's a potential title contender for years to come. But this is a miserable matchup for him. I mean, and you mentioned it as like the biggest win of his career. Well, sure, because the biggest win of his career so far is Howley and Paiva. Going from a borderline UFC talent who might be on his way out, like Paiva's like 2-4 in the UFC right now or something, to Petr Yan is like, it's going to be like merging onto the freeway on a bicycle. Like just the difference in speed and power from Petr Yan, the difference in preparation level compared to anybody that O'Malley has fought, aside from the very brief Vera fight. And I agree that Yan is a bit of a slow starter, and that may give O'Malley the cushion of a round, but it also makes Pat's outside example where Yan gets overzealous and makes a mistake even less likely because he's such a deliberate fighter. You know, like, again, you know, credit to my preview co-host Keith, where he said Petr Yan fights like a boxer who has 12 rounds. And I think that's very appropriate. And it's made him built for 5-round fights. But in a 3-round fight, it does leave the window a little more open. But my prediction was O'Malley's going to lose by decision, and it's going to be a very frustrating one because the second he realizes how fast and powerful Yan is, he's going to become gun shy. It'll be a slow first round. Yan takes first round slow. He is going to sting O'Malley badly with a counter or with a couple of leg kicks late in the first, early in the second, and the fight's going to be over. Not because O'Malley is knocked out, but because he will be in agony to pull the trigger the rest of the fight. This is going to be a learning experience for him. He's going to go back to the drawing board, watch the tape, and be like, shit, I could have beat this dude. And it's going to take him a year or two to get back to a position to do so, or to do so with a fighter of similar stature.
You know what? I'm thinking the big question mark here is how aggressive Yan is going to be. A really aggressive version of Yan could potentially provide us with, like, to a much lesser degree, like the McGregor Aldo phenomenon. Like if O'Malley can piss off Petr Yan, which is very possible. O'Malley pisses off a lot of people. If he can piss him off enough and encourage that aggression just by his pressure boxing style, he has to step forward. He has to be aggressive. And those countering opportunities will be there. O'Malley is very, very precise on his striking. His shot selection is fantastic. That opens a window, probably a much bigger window than I think Yan realizes. So I think the mental game is going to be the biggest deciding factor here. That being said, I'm probably going to lean toward Yan because it's hard to go against a UFC champion when the person across from him has had a pretty crappy list of previous fights. I mean, the highest name value on O'Malley's record here, probably Eddie Wineland, who hasn't been a relevant bantamweight since the WEC, really. So I don't know. I'm going Yan here, but I think we might see something interesting. At the very least, I think O'Malley is going to prove to a lot of people that he belongs higher ranked in the division.
I'm on the fence about what you said. I'm not on the fence about this fight result. I think my only question is, does Petr Yan finish this fight? Just the way it works. And it isn't just a strength of schedule question, which there is a real serious strength of schedule question when there is currently one fighter on the UFC roster that O'Malley has beaten. The rest of them were washed out. They retired. They lost 12 fights in a row, moved on. So, and that's Raulian Paiva, who is on a losing streak. So this isn't exactly a murderer's row as he's faced. Whereas a year ago, Petr Yan beat up Corey Sandhagen. And I see Corey Sandhagen. They don't fight the same way, but they have the height. They fight long. They're very aggressive in chunks, and they're very accurate. So and Jan lost the first round. I think that was the most clear-cut round that Sandhagen had. I think I had Sandhagen winning the 5th round because he just went, guns blazing. I'm down. I need to do something. So yeah, I think I'm going to give Peter Yan 2 very clear-cut rounds and outwork O'Malley. He's going to surprise O'Malley. O'Malley's been like, I thought I could stay on the distance and work him, but Peter Yan closes distance very, very quickly and just is a just an overall all-around better fighter. But I think the most interesting and unthought about game about it is that Peter Yan probably will take him down. And we haven't seen O'Malley struggle on the ground since Andre Sukumtop took him down a whole bunch of times. He still won that fight. But I think Jan's going to be able to get the upper hand anywhere the fight goes.
All right. So gentlemen, what's our final say? I say Jan wins by decision.
Yes.
Ben, what'd you say?
Jan by decision.
Jan by decision.
I'm gonna say Jan by TKO. I think he takes the legs out or just hits him with the volume. Although again, O'Malley does have a chance because he does have some power and precision, and we've seen Jan hurt before. It's by John Dodson, but he's been knocked down, so it's there. But,
what round you see that TKO coming?
I think it's going to be 3. I think it's going to be late. I think it's going to be just volume, similar to what happened with Aldo, right?
Yeah.
I think if he gets gun shy and then Jan just starts pouring it on, then O'Malley's in trouble. Unless O'Malley's leg gives out at any point. It's literally a 50-50 shot every round that O'Malley's legs just blow up. So, yeah.
All right, Jason, what's your final?
I'll go in the middle. I'll say split decision for Jan.
Okay. All right. That's a sexy pick right there. All right, let's move on here. We've got next fight up worth talking about is Aljamain Sterling, the reigning defending bantamweight champion, versus the former disgraced bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw. Jason, I'll begin with you. Who you got?
I'm going to pick Sterling. This is not vintage TJ. People can question the version of him if he was always clean when he was at his best. I thought he was one of the best fighters in that weight class I've ever seen. Just his skill set all around. But this isn't the best version of him Aljo's getting. And age, injuries, time away. There's just too many elements there. Aljo has such a good, aggressive, relentless wrestling style. I know TJ can wrestle, but Jan is a very good defensive wrestler. Yeah, he's not an offensive wrestler per se, but Jan put up a very good fight. And even at times, Aljo was able to get it down and grind out rounds, and he can do that. He gets you down, grind out around, steal rounds. TJ, yeah, he has the chance to maybe knock him out. Of course, he's a better striker. But so is Jan. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, TJ's way better striker than Jan. He did it against Jan. I can't see how he can't do it against TJ, who's not at an elite level anymore and not as good as Jan. So I think Aljo's going to win. It'll probably be I wouldn't be even shocked if it was like a late round submission, a 5th round submission, something like that.
You're muted, Ant.
Oh, sorry. Submission is not even. I didn't even think about that as a possibility. Like when I think about this fight, this seems like such an interesting clash of style to me.
Yes, it does.
Because I know I've said this on this show and my Sherdog days plenty. Like Aljamain Sterling is just such a weird hybrid of a fighter. Like this incredible wrestling talent, great cardio and everything, but like from a striking standpoint, his hands leave a lot to be desired. But man, he's a fantastic kicker. It's just such a weird thing where it's like his striking and wrestling style can't fully mesh, and if they did, how much better he could be. I think he's closed some of those gaps with his hands. I think his hands have gotten a lot better over the last couple of years or so. But Dillashaw at his finest is this really super elusive, switch stances and kind of pot shot here, pot shot there, sneaking a power shot. You'd never know when the takedown's coming. The takedown's going to come from some odd angle as well, off of a strike. And it creates this weird sort of like it's question marks. Like, we don't know what we're going to get when we see these two clash. But I will say that Dillashaw didn't look like quite the same guy as the version of him that had the belt when he fought Sandhagen. He looked a lot more flat-footed. He looked a lot more, I guess, segmented in what he was doing. It was like either he's kickboxing or he's trying to wrestle. It wasn't this this hybrid where you never know which one is coming. And I think that just might be the difference. Never mind the, whether he was clean or not, during his title reign, never mind that, and whatever cardio issues might result from you not taking EPO anymore. I'm leaning toward Aljamain Sterling in a very, like, a bizarre fight. Like, I don't think this is going to necessarily be the most action packed, but I also don't think we're going to see two guys stare at each other for 25 minutes. There's going to be spurts of action, and I think there's going to be some spurts of confusion, and both guys trying to adjust to something that just doesn't seem quite right, that throwing their rhythm off. But I think Aljo will make those reads faster, will adjust faster, and as the fight goes, he'll kind of get into the groove more and eke out a decision. Gentlemen, do I sound crazy?
I am sitting here right now. It is Tuesday evening, and I am still not sure exactly who I think is going to, like, as you were talking about, okay, I think TJ can do it here. Well, there's also, what about Aljamain Sterling? My pick will probably change 4.5 more times before we get to the event itself. I think I'm going to agree wholeheartedly that Dillashaw coming back didn't quite seem like the same guy. He fought differently against Corey Sandhagen. Now, granted, it was a very different stylistic clash with him, but he didn't seem to have the same pop on his punches, which has always been a very key part of his game, is being an effective, accurate, heavy-handed wrestle boxer. And he didn't really seem to, I don't recall him really, I guess the word is getting Sandhagen's respect, that kind of that not to hurt him, but just to kind of sting him a little bit. I don't remember that happening. I remember Sandhagen being able to roll with a lot of it and be out of range to kind of slip back. So it kind of hit him, but not really. So it would land strike, but it wouldn't be like a concussive blow. I think Aljamain Sterling is a lot like that. He's shorter than the what was a 5'11" or so beanpole that is Corey Sandhagen, but he's also tough to hit. He's also moves. He's got awkward styles. I mean, it's really hard to bring in somebody to your camp to train for him. You can't get a guy to imitate him. Like the days of Machida, when Machida was fighting, you're like, how the hell do I get ready with this guy? Who do I bring in to make him like that? I think Aljamain Sterling is going to frustrate TJ to win a 48-47 decision. I agree with Ant. I don't think it's going to be a barn burner. I think that the wrestling is going to cancel out. I don't think that TJ is going to spam for takedowns. He never really did. He only landed like 3 in a 5-round fight sometimes if he got that far. Whereas Sterling, I think, might try a couple times, get rebuffed, and be like, well, I guess we're kickboxing now. So I can see a odd, elusive, showboating, conversational type of fight where they will probably be talking to each other. It won't be nice words. Whoever's the referee will be like, hey, don't say mean words. And then we'll kind of go, okay, that's the co-main event. So give me Aljamain Sterling by decision.
See, I have TJ in this one, not by a ton, but
is it because of the pattern?
No, I mean, there is the pattern, right? I mean, you got that whole pattern, right? 4 wins, 1 loss. But I would say, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Jay, in terms of I think the wrestling is going to play a huge factor here.
Okay.
Because TJ, right, went for takedowns against Sandhagen. Sandhagen, if you look at his, he has like a 63% takedown defense, but he pops right back up.
Yes.
Right? He gets up really fast.
Yes.
Sterling has like a 40% takedown defense, and he likes to kind of be on the ground a little bit, go for submissions. I think that's because I agree. I think he's lost something since he came back. Yes, it was several years off. Maybe that was part to do with it. Maybe it was part of the drug stuff. We'll never know about that. But I think that's where if TJ feels comfortable in his jiu-jitsu, I think that's where he'll end up trying to steal rounds, right? I think he can end up striking with Aljo in very, sneaky, weird ways that TJ does, then spamming the takedowns and getting him down for a bit, threatening that dual threat and kind of paralyzing Aljo a little bit. Because again, if you look at Aljo's last couple fights against Jan, the point that was brought up earlier about him being a slow starter is everything. In that last fight, he was getting beat up those last couple rounds. If that goes one round more, he might get finished. He looks terrible. And so it's one of those things where if TJ, who generally doesn't have that problem, comes storming out of the gate and mixes stuff in quick, I think he's able to overwhelm Aljo. Now, again, how much has the time off hurt him? He got injured right after coming back, so he's got even more time off. Where does he look after that? But I think TJ has all the skills to beat Aljo here. I do not think it is. I do not think that it is as near they're not going to go to the ground. It's going to be just kind of weird pot shotting. I think it's going to be pretty fast paced, and I think TJ is going to look to wear down Aljo. I think that's the thing. I think TJ's whole goal is going to be trying to get exactly how Aljo looked against Jan in round 3 and 4 of the first fight, because that was you take away that illegal knee, Aljo's finished there probably, if not end of round 4, definitely round 5. I think that's Dillashaw's plan.
But I think Aljo in that first Jan fight, he just spent everything he had in that first round, just spamming out punches. It was just through everything. He was like a nonstop flurry of punches and stuff, and that's just not something that he typically does.
He did better in the second fight.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the first fight, my big thing there is Jan took Aljo down 7 times.
Yes.
Too. He wore on him. That I think is because I agree that Aljo kind of spent everything there, but I think that is a huge factor because I don't think did Jan even go for a takedown in the second fight? I don't think he did.
I don't believe so. I know that Aljo did a billion times.
Aljo got a couple, but I don't think Jan even went for one. Yeah, he didn't even go for one. Which is again, that shocked me. If Jan takes him down and wears on him and grinds him, I think Aljo might have a cardio issue if somebody with a lot of volume and a lot of forcing him to wrestle. But we'll see.
I think one thing to consider too with the wrestling, maybe Dillashaw's wrestling will be more of a factor in this because if he is losing a step, if he isn't as comfortable in the striking exchanges as he once was, I would expect a guy whose career was founded on his wrestling credentials to revert back to that.
I can see that.
Kind of
like a stopgap measure. Well, at least I have this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's something else he can rely on. I don't know if Elia agrees with me or not. But I think that could be. I know, baby. I think that could be something to consider as well. But Aljo is never shied away from that ground battle. Keep in mind how he even got the title shot, the ridiculous submission win that he got over Corey Sandhagen, the what was it, the Sullivan stretch that he did against Cody Stamen. Aljo is a wizard. Right. Aljo is a wizard on the ground, so I think he invites that with Dillashaw. If Dillashaw comes out with that plan, okay, I think Aljo can see him there and be totally comfortable. In fact, that might even be better for his cardio issues, if there are any, which I don't think he really has a cardio issue, but if he did, I think being on the ground might alleviate that a lot. If you're spending a lot of your time, just playing position on your back, and you're able to stall the offense, and you're able to sneak in and do things and do weird things, because he can stall on the ground very well and just find that one little moment to spring something on you or change position. I mean, it's a lot of possibility here. Like I said at the top, this is a strange fight. I don't know really how to quantify this one. I'm just gonna say, I know, baby. I'm just gonna say I think Aljo wins the decision here, and it'll be pretty close.
Mr. Duffy, I believe that's you.
I seem to have a stronger take on this one than most people have talked to, and that's not normal for me. Normally I'm, one of the more conservative pickers, but I've got Sterling in this one, and I've got him pretty big. Dillashaw at this point, he's 36. He's at an age where even without his past, even without the injuries, even without one of the most famous, PED busts in recent memory, even without the multiple long layoffs, he would be in decline in a division that is not generally kind to the elderly, except for Jose Aldo. But he isn't just 36. He's 36 and had that high-profile bust for PEDs. And anytime a top-level fighter has that kind of positive drug test, the instant question is, okay, is this a recent thing or is this an always thing? Like when it was Anderson Silva, it's like, was he dirty all along? Or is this something he did as he started to push 40 in order to be able to keep up with a newer generation of fighters after he lost the title? I don't know the answer to that. With Dillashaw, I think I kind of do. The fact that Cody Garbrandt accused him over a year before his bust and named the specific rare for MMA drug that he was going to get popped for tells me all I need to know, because that is a longtime teammate, and it wasn't like he was throwing darts in the dark. Otherwise, he would have said something like Ostarine or Clomiphene that probably account for like a third of all USADA suspensions just by themselves. But no, he said EPO. That leads me to believe that Dillashaw was on EPO for a long time. What does EPO do? Makes your body make more red blood cells. It helps things like cardio, not just in fights, but allowing you to make greater gains in training. We're talking about Dillashaw, a guy who, he started as more of a pure wrestler, became a sensational striker and one of the most seamless wrestle boxers ever, but it was all predicated on a furious weaponized pace and endless cardio. Those are things that would have been going away at 36 anyway. I think they're going to start going away hard. I think we're going to see the end of TJ Dillashaw, at least as a title pictured guy. Like, he is so talented, and he's so skilled that he could stick around as a top 10 guy for a good long while. But I think we're going to see kind of his high watermark as, or like his last stand as someone in the immediate title picture against Sterling. Just, I differ from some other people on this. I didn't think he looked great against Sandhagen. I thought he looked like a somewhat slowed, less smooth, less seamless version of himself. And those marginal differences, those tiny slippages, mean a lot when you're fighting at the very highest levels of the sport in arguably the most unforgiving division. Sterling is not a perfect champ. He's gotten to the top while still having some notable liabilities in his game. I just don't know if Dillashaw is the guy to exploit them any further. I've got Sterling by decision, but it's a decision where I think Sterling is the one pulling away in the later rounds. I think he wins this going away. And if Dillashaw is sufficiently tired or compromised and turns to his wrestling as a safety valve, I could see Sterling tapping out a tired Dillashaw in the 4th or 5th round. But I think that's the outside chance. Give me Sterling in a decision that leaves no doubt.
Jay, what's your final verdict?
It's funny, you guys been swaying me back and forth, and I think Duffy, his thoughts had an impact, and Pat was right on the money when he said that Aljo plays off his back too much and gives up time, because he does. He will look for submission opportunities and sometimes pull them out of thin air, like the Suluev stretch, and sometimes not be able to pull them out of thin air, like when Peter Yan took him down, like half dozen times or something like that. I am still leaning towards Sterling. I am going for Sterling by decision. And I am genuinely curious to see TJ Dillashaw's condition at round 3 and beyond, because I did for Sherdog, I did score the fight against Sandhagen against Dillashaw.
All right, Jason, what's your final verdict?
A mute. No, I mean, like I said before, Sterling. I'm going with Sterling. I think like maybe late submission, because you guys are all mentioning EPO helping red blood cells, energy level, cardio. I feel even more confident about a late submission by Sterling.
All right, Pat, final verdict.
I'm going split decision for TJ on this one. I think
taking it to the house.
Yeah, no, I think he just as Jay says. I think he wrestles a lot. Sterling tries to get submissions. He survives, and as long as he survives, I think he ends up getting enough top time and enough shots that he ends up winning rounds and taking it away. But we'll see.
I mean, Aljo went 2 for 22 when trying to take Yan down in his last fight.
Yeah.
And neither
TJ
of
has
the
a
two
similar,
were. Yeah.
Yeah, and TJ has a similar takedown defense. So
I don't think that's why I don't think that Sterling is going to take him down. I think there's more likely that he will reverse him than actually land his own takedown. Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on to the main event. Charles Oliveira, the former lightweight champion, against Islam Makhachev for the vacant belt. Before we go into the official picks, I'm seeing a lot of hyperbolic talk out there on the interwebs, and there was I believe
Not on
Michael
the internet.
Bisping, not a place of rationality and common sense. Michael Bisping, former champion, great analyst in my opinion, good commentator. He had a very bizarre take. I mean, I'll blame more whoever was interviewing him, whoever was talking to him to create this sort of facepalm moment for me. But he was asked whether a win over Makhachev at this point would make him the greatest lightweight of all time, and Bisping said yes. Are we grossly premature in talking about Charles Oliveira anywhere near greatest lightweight of all time?
No. I think he's close.
If
he beats Makhachev, I think he's close.
Look at his resume. His resume is sick.
Yeah.
With finishes too.
Yeah, like over the relevant part of Khabib's career, say the last 10 or 11 fights, Charles Oliveira fought a comparable level of competition. A lot of the same fighters, but a comparable level of competition, went similarly undefeated, finished more of them, and that's what matters to me. I mean, and even if you look back at like his very spotty early UFC days, a lot of his worst failures were at featherweight and featherweight plus. As a lightweight, I think he's top 3 or 4 right now, and Makhachev would be a huge move towards number 1. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think it's unreasonable at all.
I think part of it, again, and not to get too sidetracked, part of it comes down to what you define as GOAT, right? But because he has, I think part of the reason why people would dismiss that resume and why they have is because he's looked vulnerable in a lot of those fights, right? Like he's looked very vulnerable in almost all of them. But that being said, yeah, I mean, if you're going based on pure wins, he has a much better resume than Khabib. I think it's on that basis. I think yes, he is GOAT.
You know what? My issue with it is not necessarily Oliveira being ranked high amongst great lightweights or lightweight champions. My issue has to be off the back of Makhachev, who, despite how much he's talked about, despite the thank you, baby, thank you.
She said you don't need that.
I know, right? Despite the proximity to the greatest lightweight, the debatable greatest lightweight ever, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's largely unproven. Like his biggest win is probably Dan Hooker, and after that, Drew Dober. Like
Bobby Green.
That's what that's what we're talking about as the defining moment of the greatest lightweight possibly of all time for Charles Oliveira. If he gets that win, I'm just, it has to come against a better, more proven name than that, in my opinion.
He's beaten everybody. That's the thing. He's beaten everybody, and now he's beating the next best thing, a guy on a 10-fight losing streak. I think that's what it is. Like, he's done it. He's lapped a division. Now he's beaten a legit number one contender. Like there is not much else he can do. Like, at this point, it might just go up in the division.
Well, I mean, that's fine. Like that's what's provided to him. That means we should be having that conversation. That's the conversation that should have been had immediately after he finished Justin Gaethje. If that's the case, I think Makhachev adds a wrinkle in the conversation, but isn't the end all be all of it.
Again, I think this goes completely back to the fact that Islam has looked pretty much dominant, right? Like he is. I think he lost one round to Thiago, technically, right? Like, but like, I mean, like, otherwise has looked just ridiculously dominant, and that's what people associate, right? Because if you're looking at just record, it makes no sense that once he beats Islam, he's GOAT. Like that, what? Like, yeah. But if you're looking at the actual performances, who Islam is constantly compared to, all of that, it's hard not to get that roped into some fans' minds. But yeah, agreed. He should have been, if he was going to be called GOAT because of his win-loss record, he should have been called that after Gaethje for sure.
And I think something forgotten is that most of Oliveira's losses and the tough losses, like the Lamas loss and the Max loss and all those were at featherweight. Here are the people that he has lost to at lightweight fights, not the fight where he weighed in at 155 pounds, even though it was a featherweight fight. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, and Paul Felder. That's it. That's the only people that have beaten him at lightweight division. And then he's rattled off a list of names that we all know. And I can't think of many more five win stretches that are more impressive than Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. Like that is a Jones running through the former light heavyweight champion line. You know, he did Rampage and Machida. When he beat all those guys in a row, that's that level. Or Shogun in Pride when he was just smashing faces. That when top 5 Kevin Lee is the weakest name on that 5-fight resume, you're doing pretty well. And that's right, he finished 4 of them. I admit I probably undervalued Oliveira when I put my greatest list of 155ers together for Sherdog, which I think we're running them actively now. But Makhachev won't put him over the hump, but it will be another brick in the wall that is really close. Like his resume is superior to Khabib's. If it's not yet, it will be in like a year if he keeps winning. So you just got to make weight.
All right, gentlemen. That being said, I mean, let's talk about this actual fight. Who gets it done? How? Jay, I might as well leave the floor.
Yeah, I'll take it.
You.
It's so funny to think this is going to be the first time in UFC history we've ever had 2 fighters with 10 fight or higher win streaks fight each other. We've had the unbeaten situation. I don't know what that was weird. Anyway, we've never had this kind of 2 fighters this dominant, these long win streaks face each other. Which obviously could be Tony would have, but you know what, that fight was cursed. But there are win streaks and then there are win streaks. And you look at Islam Makhachev and you look at it as dominance over top 25 fighters. Like that is more how I view his resume than I would, in Oliveira. Like he has wins that have aged well, like Arman Tsarukyan. That looks very, very shiny right now. But this was an unheralded debuting late notice Arman Tsarukyan, so that's a whole different situation. When your best win is Dan Hooker, and wait a second, Charles Oliveira just club and sub Justin Gaethje. Wait, he just did that same basically thing to Dustin Poirier. He outslugged Michael Chandler. He ruined Tony Ferguson, and he let Kevin Lee hang himself on a guillotine. His skills are developed in a way that I never would have seen them come together. Because yes, he was a venomous grappler, but he was a live by the sword, die by the sword grappler. This is a guy who would fall into knee bars if he was trying to get one. This is a guy who would play into a takedown game. Like, I can hang with Anthony Pettis on the ground and get choked out. That's gone. Whatever issues he worked out, not only for the time being, at least, I mean, he's fought great grapplers since then, have wiped that out. But they've given him this ability to hit people in the face, which is something you don't usually hear from an extraordinary grappler. Think of the best submission fighters in UFC history. How many of them are knockout artists? There aren't many. You can't.
Damian Maia.
Exactly. Damian Maia slipped in. You have to slip on a banana peel to TKO against Damian Maia. Whereas he has been hurting people with his fists. And that is something that will add to the game that Islam Makhachev, I don't think, is ready for. Because this is an open question to you guys. Who is the heaviest hitter that Makhachev has faced in this lineup or otherwise? Drew Dober?
Green.
Dober, yeah.
Or Bobby Green, who, I think he earned his first finish when he took out Al Iaquinta in like a decade. So,
Bobby Green's probably the best overall striker, but he's not the most powerful.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like more of a point fighter.
And the situation that I feel is going to arise is that Makhachev is going to find himself immediately struggling should he take down Oliveira, when he will take down Oliveira, because Oliveira is almost the kind of guy who will practically pull guard in this situation. Now, he's not like a Dern. He's not terrific off his back. He's good for sweeps and stuff. But the threat of that will, I think, make Makhachev think twice and think, well, I can hang on the feet. Makhachev has never been that guy. The only time I can think of that is when he popped, Gleison Tibau? That's all I can think of. Oliveira has too many ways to win. Makhachev is facing a different kind of guy. And to me, I am going third round just because durability, I think, is going to be on Makhachev's side, which I don't even know if it's the case. How is he react getting hit hard? But I'm going to go Oliveira. I don't think he will submit Makhachev. I think he might make a statement by pounding him out, but I'm going to go third round TKO for Oliveira, and it will be the kind of thing where Khabib might come and fight him. That's my big call, is that this is the kind of win that brings Khabib back into the fold, because no, Khabib is not retired forever.
You think this is the sort of win that Khabib's mom is going to look at and say, yes, son, you can fight again.
Especially if
and he walks out to Mama said, knock you out.
Shout out to Jason Hartley. We had a long talk about this, especially if Islam Makhachev and Khabib Nurmagomedov are childhood friends that grew up together. Avenge your brother is different than some other kind of win. So,
yeah. So if Islam Makhachev was able to go to the Nurmagomedov household and go into the refrigerator and walk around without his shoes, then he will be
but not without his shorts, because they're never nudes. Yeah.
Then he will be the way that Khabib re-enters the UFC. It's a bold prediction. I like it.
And it's a new test, so it isn't just old. It's not Justin Gaethje smoking him. It's someone I've never fought, a great name, a new talent.
It presents a stylistic challenge.
Exactly.
Or
so yeah, those are my bold takes, and I am genuinely curious to see if you guys think I'm nuts. Like Jason Burgos is chomping at the bit.
He's ready.
He's ready.
Please,
come on, Burgos. I think it's your turn.
I'm not so much ready. I'll keep it fairly short because Jay covered a lot of this. I think there's so many comparisons to Khabib, but Khabib was unbelievable because his top game was just dominant and punishing, and Makhachev's not that kind of guy. He's got a good top game, but he's just not that guy. That guy will be perfect against Charles because Charles can get hurt. He can get taken down, he can get hurt. That said, since he can't damage him, since he can't throw him, Charles is one of those great guys on the ground. He's just not going to lay there and look for a moment. No, he's going to make you pay. He's going to do things. He's going to stay busy. I just think he's not going to get submitted. Islam doesn't offer the true dangers necessary on the ground over 5 rounds. I think what Jay's saying, late finish, I can see it too. I think it's going to Charles is just – there's going to be dangerous moments. There's going to be things, but I think Charles will just get to him late. There'll be moments where it has to be standing. He's going to tear him up on the feet, and he'll eventually get a stoppage. I can see him similar to his last few fights. He gets a stop on – he knocks him down, goes to the ground to attack, and submits him or something like that. I can see it just repeating the same way. Islam's a really, really good fighter. Charles Oliveira is a great fighter.
Well said. Pat, what's your take on this one?
So this one for me is tough because it's I think a huge factor here is just which fighter gets in their own way more. Here's the thing. Makhachev, especially against Makhachev. I don't know. However you say his last. I'm gonna say Islam. I always mispronounce things. Whatever, Ant. Anyway, I think a big problem he had in a couple of his last fights was he wanted to stand and trade a little bit. The Moises fight I thought was a good example of that. He was on stand up way too long for some of those things. I think if he stands up with Charles, I think Charles beats him up. I think Charles is heavy-handed enough. I think he can knock him out like Adriano Martins did. I could easily see Islam being knocked out that way. But on the flip side, I think something we forget sometimes with Charles, especially in that Kevin Lee fight. Like Kevin Lee took him down and was fine for a lot of that fight. Won multiple rounds, I believe. Like was taking him down kind of at will. And Charles was working off his back, whatever. But in terms of the judges, doesn't look great. If Charles decides to play that game where, Islam takes him down and he just lets it happen and he goes for submissions, kind of rolls those dice. If he doesn't submit Islam, I think he loses decision. I think if he puts, too much time off of his back, I don't like that for Charles, but I could easily see him falling into that trap. So those two factors are huge for me. It's both of them getting a little bit too comfortable in places they probably shouldn't. If they don't do that, if both of them really, rein that in on either of their sides, I think at that point, I'm going to lean Charles ever so slightly, but I think that it's very possible Islam gets it done as long as he can protect his neck, right? I think he can grind him out. I don't think Charles has the ability to just pop back up like some people do. I don't think he likes to a lot, but even when he's been taken down and he's tried to get up, it takes him a while. I think Islam could grind him. That being said, Charles's hands are dynamite lately, just knocking people down, doing great work. And Islam does not have a tested chin, as Jay pointed out. In terms of strikers, he wasn't fighting people that were knocking people out all the time. I mean, and one of the last guys he did was Adriano Martins, and that didn't go well for him. So it's as much as a coin flip as you can do. I'll lean Charles if they both rein in their respective, arrogances, I suppose. Otherwise, it just comes down to it. Most intrigued fight I've been looking forward to in a long, long time. That's what I'll say with this one.
And you know what's so crazy, guys? If this fight happened 3 years ago, back when Makhachev was beating Sarukian and Davi Hamosh and blanketing people, and Oliveira was, beating the David Tamers and Nick Lenses and what have you, we would have, first of all, never even thought of Charles Oliveira's striking as a factor and an advantage, and two, it would have just been an absolute blanket party for Islam Makhachev. So
it would have been the sort of fight that Islam would be given to build his name up.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It would be he would be able to take him down at will. He'd be undangerous when he gets him there because Oliveira can let a round go by when he's trying for an armbar that's really not there, and Kevin Lee knows it, and he can go, no, we're just going to keep it here. Yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah. I think when we look at fight strategy, like the smart thing is always to go the path of least resistance. That's typically what you want to see. I think going the path of least resistance for Makhachev is what puts him in trouble, because I think if you're Khabib and you're coaching Makhachev or Cormier, who'll be coaching from the commentary booth, like that that having a kickboxing battle with Charles Oliveira is not the move. That is simply just not the move. And of course, there's always lucky punches, there's always power striking, there's always just catching somebody. I know, baby. Okay, I know there's just catching somebody that can happen, but that's just not the probable outcome if he were to stand up and try to kickbox with Oliveira. So that means you got to go to the ground, which means when you're just trying to go to the ground, you're just trying to get that takedown, man, those takedowns come a lot more obviously. And this is disregarding the fact that your striking skills in general are subpar compared to your opponent, or even compared to the average of the top 10 in the division. So you come in with subpar striking skills, and for sure you got to take this fight to the ground. So that those takedowns come from a lot further away. They come with a lot less setup. They're so committed that you stick your neck out. They open up so many doors for Oliveira to just do what he does. And I think he is going to show us just how untested Makhachev is. I think this is going to be a statement win for Oliveira, and one that's going to live on his highlight reel. I think Oliveira wins this by a landslide. Jason, you look like you want to punch through the screen.
No, I think Duffy needs to take us home though.
Pleasure. Yeah. just a general look of displeasure, huh, Jason? Or is that just your face? Huh?
Yeah, no,
This is
just
your
looking
face?
at you gives me this face. So you, know,
Oh, okay.
you should be
Okay.
used to it with the trench.
Fair
I
enough.
mean, you've
Fair
seen
enough.
it
I haven't
before.
seen it for a while. It's beautiful. Ben, what say you?
It sounds like I'm going to be the dissenting voice here, and I say it in full recognition that you all may very well be right, and I, in particular, have underestimated and written off Charles Oliveira over and over again over the course of this incredible run he's been on. I was slow to get away from my 2009, 2011 image of what Charles Oliveira was, and even as he started just putting away top level people, I picked against him incorrectly. I think 2 or 3 of his last 5 fights, and here I am still not having learned my lesson, doing it again. But I think Makhachev is going to get Oliveira down, and I think once he gets there, he's not Khabib Nurmagomedov, but neither is he. I ordered Khabib on Wish, and this is what I got. He is a close facsimile. He is 90% of maybe the most suffocating, exhausting top position grappler we've ever seen in MMA in Khabib Nurmagomedov. So there's going to be a chance for Oliveira to snatch this fight away at any point all the way through the entire 25 minutes, because the Oliveira that quits and can't come back from adversity is gone. And he's been replaced from a guy that apparently thrives on adversity and breaks people who are used to breaking people. The Ferguson fight is definitely one I incorrectly picked against him. And here I am going again because I think that's the outside chance. Oliveira is definitely the more dangerous striker. He's got a ton of power. It's become a +4 where it was once a minus. But I think he's going to spend a lot of his time on the ground. I think he's going to be the one getting tired faster there. And I think his natural instinct, which is to stay busy on the ground, even if from the bottom, and look for opportunities, is not going to serve him well against Makhachev. Because much like Khabib, he's good at taking people down in positions where they can't do any of the things they want to because they're too busy surviving. They're too busy trying to free their wrist because they know if they don't, they're going to start getting punched in the head. They're too busy watching their own neck to worry about their opponents. I think we're going to get a lot of that. And I think we're going to get a decision where, Makhachev maybe wins 4 rounds out of 5, but they're all close because you have to debate whether the one huge knee he took that rocked him was enough to win the round, or the takedown that he got anyway and just pummeled Oliveira for 3.5 minutes outweighed it. So give me Makhachev by decision, but I'm very open to the idea that I'm wrong here.
All right, so I got Ben. Ben says Makhachev by decision. Jay, your final verdict is?
I'm going to go
Oliveira.
TKO round 3 for Oliveira.
Okay, Jason, final verdict
Submission round 4.
for Oliveira.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Pat.
The more I think about it, I'm still gonna go Oliveira. I'm gonna go round 4 TKO though, because I think one thing we didn't touch on that is a little bit of an X factor here is that Makhachev can get taken down. He's been taken down a couple of times, and when he has been taken down, he doesn't get up fast. So if Oliveira can take him down and rain down elbows, I think that changes everything. So yeah, I'll go again. I don't disagree with Ben's analysis though. It could easily go his way as well. But I'll go round 4 TKO.
Yeah, my final verdict, I'll say Oliveira TKO round 3. So, all right, gentlemen, I think that's a good place to conclude it. A very thorough analysis of the top 3 fights on UFC 280. I guess one last thing maybe that might be useful, a chance to highlight one other fight on the card that you may be looking forward to, whether main card or prelims. I'll start with and this probably isn't going to amount to much, but it seems like there's some action potential here. Volkan Ozdemir and Nikita Krylov. Just it's going to be really good or really bad, and it's probably going to end in a finish either way. And it's rare you see a bad fight that ends in a finish. Last time I can think of that was Frank Mir Krokop. So something strange is probably going to happen there. Any other fights that you'd like to highlight?
I'll say Brady and Muhammad. I can't believe that's on the prelims now. That fight is fantastic, and it's such a great showcase for Brady. I think Brady's going to lose because it's just a level above, but if he wins, damn.
Yeah, good pick there.
like there are 6 fights on this card that could headline any given random event. Like you can go all the way from Muhammad Brady all the way up the main card, and any of those fights could headline a ESPN show or even bigger. I would have talked about the Nishikawa fight, but as we know, that fight has been scratched for reasons we still don't know, because it wasn't as clear.
Nishikawa was not old enough to get into a place that serves alcohol.
Well, they're in Abu Dhabi. I don't think he has to worry about that one.
Oh,
It's it's a pretty oddball thing. I'm going to go with Katlyn Chookagian versus Manon Fiorot, unironically saying that
You were a damn liar.
No, I am not, because I missed the last Katlyn Chookagian fight because I almost died from COVID. I didn't almost die, but I was knocked out.
Katlyn Chookagian has missed every Katlyn Chookagian fight.
And Ben Duffy saved
Fuck you.
me.
You're not looking forward to that.
I am. No, I really am, because I want to see if Manon Fiorot is the real deal. Because if she's not and she gets 28'd, what the hell does the UFC do with Katlyn Chookagian? Because does she fight Bell again? She's beaten everybody else. I think she will. So yeah, that I am unironically very curious in how that plays out. Because what do you do? It's the worst situation for them if Katlyn wins.
They keep Chookagian around. She's almost like Dr. Kevorkian's like carbon monoxide machine. She's a painless alternative to facing Shevchenko.
Well, it's like the Benavidez effect, where Mighty Mouse is slaying everybody, and then Benavidez is beating the rest of the contenders.
Yeah, but Benavidez fucking hurt you.
Yeah, Katlyn Chookagian
Chookagian is just going to key eye the air for 15 minutes, and then you lose.
I mean, she'd land like 150 somethings, so I guess that you might have like a small bruise afterwards or something.
I think key on the air is the best thing I've heard in this whole show, and this has been a good show.
All right. Any other fights that we want to highlight before we call things a wrap?
Not
I like
fight, but go for it.
I was gonna say I like Gamrot Dariush quite a bit. I think that's
I would just sorry to step on you, Pat. I actually, just for the audience to know, actually included this fight for the Who You Got breakdown and not Peter Yan Sean O'Malley, because I knew we'd all be in favor of Peter Yan, and I thought we might vary on Dariush Gamrot because of how awesome that fight is.
It was the hardest fight on the card for me to pick, even above the main event.
Yeah. That's when I still haven't quite wrapped my head around who I think is going to win. So should be an interesting fight night. I mean, we got a lot of stuff to watch here, and if I'm not mistaken, this actually starts really early.
10 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, 7 a.m. for me on the West Coast. So I wake up, watch fights while I'm drinking coffee. So I am okay with that. I just might spike my coffee with some proper 12. You never know. So that will do it for this edition of the Living Death Show. Big thank you to my good friends Jason and Patrick for joining us yet again. Can't wait to see you guys back on the show. And of course, the door's open anytime you guys want to come on. Any fight, particularly you just want to shoot the breeze with us about, feel free to hit me up, and it's done. Of course, Ben and Jay hold it down every week. You can catch their coverage on Sherdog.com. Pat's as well, actually, who's returned to Sherdog. And Jason, you can find his coverage of other sports on Sportsnaut with occasional MMA. I see you post MMA articles from time to time, but if you like other things, tune to Jason for that. So, and of course, I've got to deal with this young lady. So, stay beautiful. Stay. Whoa. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Tell that friend to tell more friends. Stay beautiful. Stay positive. Keep your daughters entertained before they interfere with the podcast. And stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace. Okay, baby. Okay.